All right, good morning. I am David for BigBits. Here we go. We're going to get started talking about some of the flows into and out of the Bitcoin ETFs. There's been a lot of news recently, especially since the last live that we've done here. But um, there was pretty significant news yesterday with GBTC. They are no longer um, selling nearly as much as they were and having a huge daily outflow. I want to take you back. Wow. I don't know what happened there. I had it on my profile earlier, but you can look back here for the first time since the ETFs launched. GBTC is not the product with the largest daily outflow, which is interesting. That means ARK dumped more than GBTC, which very, very odd. And we go look at the numbers on far side. This is yesterday, April 2nd. GBTC had 81.9 million in outflows. ARK had 87.5. ARK averages 40 million inflows a day, and that was just a huge outflow for them, especially compared to GBTC. And the reason this is kind of important is because you look at GBTC, they have a larger net outflow than the inflow of any other single ETF. Now, combined, there's a huge net inflow. But what we are looking for here has been the progress in hopefully finding a balance between inflows and outflows so that hopefully GBTC will stop selling off and kind of keeping the market in check until then. Now, there is some other news that we've got to look out for as concerned to the U.S. government moving their seized Bitcoin, but seeing only 81 million is very good, especially considering GBTC averages 270 million in outflows a day. There's a lot to consider when you look at these numbers. Now, this can be a little bit confusing if you're not used to looking at this, but 22.4 million, this is their maximum. And even though it's an outflow, you think that's their maximum outflow. Just the way the wording is, it's kind of confusing, but that is their best day, closest to positive. They've never had a day where they've took on money as opposed to selling it. So something to keep an eye on with the GBTC stuff. Slowing down, hopefully, but something to watch out for here is these other ones with their inflows. Luckily, yesterday we had two large outflows that were offset by pretty much just the inflow on BlackRock. Everything's still looking pretty good. We'll take a look at the TA in just a moment, but really wanted to highlight these flows and why we should continue to be paying attention to those. The last live stream I had, I forget which day it was, maybe the 28th, we talked a lot about this pattern that had started to unfold, I think looking back to March 19th, where BlackRock started having way less inflows. So something kind of changed because for a long time, BlackRock was having these huge inflows equal to or greater than GBTC's outflows. But then something changed and BlackRock had significantly less inflows while GBTC had still significantly large outflows. So somebody probably taking profits, something going on with the flow change that week, and hopefully what we're seeing now is another change with the flow where we have GBTC flow slowing down. And that's where I really wanted to start the video today, because these flows are very important for the near term future for Bitcoin. The other event, like I just mentioned, would be the US government seized Bitcoin from the Silk Road trial. Go down here and try to find where they mentioned this. It wasn't too terribly long ago, so it might not be very far down. I could have sworn I shared that. Anyway, Let me pull it up on the other screen real quick. There was a huge ordeal with that. Forget how many Bitcoins that they have, but a very significant amount. I think they said $2 billion worth. Okay, here we go. Approximately $2 billion worth of Bitcoin was seized by U.S. authorities in the past in connection with the Silk Road marketplace. That has been moved to a new address, and they say that it's pointing towards Coinbase, which would indicate that they plan on selling it. Now, they've already announced that they plan on selling these things, so we can kind of expect that. It's completely fine. The last time I think the U.S. government sold, it was the bottom of the market around the FTX collapse. So we can survive it. We've got the ETFs. As long as they remain healthy, we'll be good. I think everything's fine, but there is a lot to take in that you can have another flush coming out of here. And that's going to kind of lead me into the TA kind of portion, where we're going to look at a few different things. A couple things that were posted recently that I kind of liked were this flag, which I do see as well, but also Income Sharks, who is probably my favorite account to follow because they're very reasonable. Very smart person. I have a lot of respect for them. They are calling for a potential flag. Now, if you remember from my last live stream, I talked about we had a couple of ways this could play out. So we were dropping, and we had talked about this kind of touch and go on the bottom band, but we had talked about how this could come up and continue up and ride up the bands as it has in the past on those sort of touch and goes on the bottom. But really, based on the indicators, looking at monthly and weekly and longer time frames, I wasn't expecting things to really take off quickly. So you can look, we're going to have a couple lines here to the chart right now. This is kind of what you've got. I have my lines extended. I forget how you change that setting. Well, whatever. But you kind of have that flag up here. You can see that where it came up. The first post is kind of hinting at ranging in through here and breaking out. What I think is more likely, based on what I'm looking at further out, is that we get some sort of downward channel. And actually, the best way to do this is just to copy your top line. Yeah. So something like this. You can see it kind of lines up with a top here. So resistance, support, and what I am kind of expecting to play out, if we don't get a quick correction on the 50, and again, I'm not looking to trade here. I would consider a breakout trade at the top of this channel. But what I kind of expect, something like this. And the reason for that is because this line here, excuse me, I believe the 100 moving average is probably your best target for a bounce, especially if we have a flush. I don't think we're going to come all the way down to the 200-day moving average, because usually, you know, if you look at past cycles, if you come down to the 200 moving average, like we did here, it's over. Even though we came back and made new highs, like, it was over. The euphoric stage and the bullish cycle and all the huge gains were pretty much over with here. We got pretty lucky just to have a huge bounce like that. But once you come back down to that 200 moving average after one of these parabolic runs, it's going to be hard to set new highs and continue to set even higher highs and continue to climb like we did back here. So what we're really kind of hoping to see, and really the part of the chart that reminds me the most of where we're at right now is back in 2021. We've had this huge climb up in price. We went down, touched the bottom of the bands. We're somewhere in right here, I believe, right now. If we have some sort of fractal play out. Again, there could be a flush to that 100, but this is kind of what I hope for. You know, you want to see things move up quickly and do well, but we did touch the 100 up here and bounced off of that at the top of that cycle as well. That, when it did not hold, so we saw a strong bounce from the 100-day here. That was very solid. That's what we wanted to see. But I knew that things were over when we closed so far below the 100 moving average here. Once you lose these key moving averages, party's kind of over. You can expect things to go down quickly as they have went up quickly. We got, like I said, we got very lucky here. We reclaimed some moving averages. You can see we reclaimed it here, but we couldn't reclaim the 200 moving average on the way back down. There were some tests, but it just didn't hold. There wasn't the strength there like there was during this kind of euphoric run up. Alts had a great time, of course, because they continued to kind of run, and there was a lot of frenzy in the crypto market, regardless of the TA that was playing out. But just going through and looking at these moving averages, if there were a fractal right now, I would guess here where we are right now. But we got to be mindful. This cycle is definitely very different. We have a lot of different dynamics at play with the ETFs. And again, this is kind of where I'm at. We've already kind of had one test back here. I didn't really look at that before. But we did test this here. There's a lot of caution to be had here. And this was after the ETF announcement came back here. The sell-off, of course, from GBTC originally tested that 100. Let me pull up my other indicators because we're kind of focused right now on just the price and moving averages. But where are we at with actual indicators on the daily chart? We are looking for pretty much sideways movement for the moment. We are in some sort of channel, whether it's that flag I mentioned earlier or it's this downward channel like I shared from Income Sharks, and some sort of flag like that. But the indicators that I have, so the stochastic weight advanced, this is pointing downward, and honestly, we're not at a super low point just yet. If we were to get down to the 30s, I would consider that a nice flush and maybe consider looking for a trade. We're in the middle of this range right now. There is no need to even consider thinking about trading on a daily time frame, at least in my opinion. RSI is neutral. There's really no strong trend on the RSI. Your MACD is still coming down, and a lot of times I don't show the MACD on my indicator list very often just because it takes up a lot of space and there's not a lot of information on it. But I do refer back to the MACD when I'm looking for kind of breakouts, because a lot of times you don't get breakouts from channels when MACD is still kind of resetting. So you'll notice if we go back into the past, MACD, when you have breakouts, will go up, and over time it will slowly go back to zero as the moving averages kind of catch up to each other. And when you catch those crossovers, that's usually a good indicator that there's a new trend forming when there's a crossover around zero. This has been probably one of my more profitable strategies I've implemented in the past, is looking for crossovers near zero on the MACD when other indicators align. So this one is a perfect example of why I use the indicator set that I do. Look at this. Let's zoom in. This was perfect right here. starting a new trend, a very low value on the stochastic weighted advance, you had a trend change on the smoothed RSI from the lows, and you've got a crossover on the MACD. So I would have possibly bought at the end of this day, but realistically probably would have bought somewhere around here. And to me, that was a clear indicator of a new change in the way things were being traded. Now, really, if you go back, this was probably the clearest indicator of the market bottom, was when from 16,000 we had this parabolic run up. I mean, if you're looking for signals during a bear market that it's probably going to be over with, a parabolic move from the bottom, pretty good sign, especially after all of that consolidation. It looks like absolutely nothing happened back there, and that's what it felt like as well. But let's zoom back out, take a look at our indicators, and let's take a look at this on a little bit higher time frame now. Clear these drawings off. This is getting really ugly. All right, so now what I'm going to do, we're going to take this from a monthly perspective and drill down. This is kind of my favorite method of looking at TA to get a good feel for what's going on. Again, I've already mentioned we're in the middle of a channel. This isn't really a great time to trade on the daily, but maybe there's something we can see on the monthly. Let's take a look. And this is something that I wanted to kind of look at the other day when the month ended for March, because when we printed the new candle, we had new upper bands, and here our upper band is usually tested when we start out above it. So you can go back to a lot of these prior candles in the prior markets and look. Very rarely does price not go back in within the bands on the monthly chart. All of these pretty much come back down and test that. So the fact that we started out the month red, not a surprise at all. Now, how we react from touching the bottom here, maybe coming into it a little bit more, is pretty important. I don't see a lot of reason to expect that the monthly chart should finish green this month or particularly strong like it did here. Go back, trying to find a month that might be similar. I mean, I could see something like this month from 2017. We started out well above the monthly Bollinger Band. We went way down into it, and we still closed red, but we're still above the band. So we're still riding the band up, even with a red monthly candle here. And what I liked about this one, that's a nice little hammer looking candle. That's still bullish, and of course it was. It continued to play out that way. So on the monthly, I don't see a lot of potential unless you can get some sort of trade down here towards the lows of the prior month on a flush. And that's what I'm looking for, is some sort of flush back into the Bollinger Bands, so that if you're wanting to long, that's where I would look to long. Now, if you're wanting to short, I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon on a monthly, just because let's take a look back at these indicators, and they're much better when you look at them zoomed out. My stochastic weights advanced, my favorite indicator personally, it's getting near very overbought. Last time this happened, back in 2020 or 2021, excuse me, we got very overbought for several months. We haven't touched that yet, but it did form that divergence, and that did pretty much mark the end of the cycle. We are up very high right now. We're not very overbought, so I'm not thinking this is the end of the cycle, especially with all the sort of dynamics that we have. And I see some people in the live stream right now. If y'all got any questions, just ask me. But this is part of the reason why I think there's not a lot of room for the price to go up this month, and that we do kind of trade in that daily channel, just because the monthly is not looking super bullish at the moment. Now, if we get a huge flush and we can come back up, I think people are waiting for an opportunity on such a flush. Again, RSI is high, but the trend is still coming up. And that's another reason why I think we can continue to go sort of sideways or even finish the month red, just because the trend on the RSI is still so strong to the upside that RSI hasn't even really went very well overbought. So even though the stochastics got very high, the RSI hasn't been that high. It doesn't really mark a traditional top, in my opinion. You go back to 2017, you stayed near a 95 for months on end. You go back to 2021, above 90, 92. Come here, we're only at 76. So something that gives me a lot of hope for continued growth past this month is the RSI and that strong trend. And I use the MACD to kind of confirm these things, that the trend is still strong. And one thing you notice about the MACD when you look at previous sort of bull cycles, and I'm going to switch to BLX on this so we can zoom out even further and see more information. I love looking at BLX for monthly stuff. Let's switch to log our chart if it'll allow me to. And then let's hide the Bollinger Bands so we can kind of actually see what's going on. We don't need those at the moment. All right. Take a look at this. We'll have to zoom in. But the MACD, let's go all the way back here. Look at the MACD. Well, shoot. My head's kind of in the way, but you'll get the picture. 165. So the MACD had a level of 165 or so in January 14. You'll notice the next cycle, the MACD topped out 2530. Next cycle topped out 11,740. Another thing that gives me hope for this cycle, that we've got plenty of time remaining in it, is that we are only at 8,424 on the MACD. Now, there's no guarantee that it's going to continue to set a new high, but that's just kind of my thesis, that we will, every cycle, the volatility should increase, so the MACD should continue to reach higher and higher levels, and it's also reached lower and lower levels on the drops as well, because the numbers you're working with are getting bigger and bigger as you set new all-time highs, and then the numbers you're dealing with on the drop are also getting bigger and bigger because you're coming from taller numbers. These aren't percentage-based numbers. These are raw price numbers that you're using when you're looking at moving averages and comparing those in the MACD. You're seeing these raw numbers come through. So the scale that you're working with makes a big difference when you're looking at the MACD values compared to something like RSI that's capped between 0 and 100. So hopefully that all kind of makes sense. And looking at the monthly, hopefully you all kind of get the picture. That is that's probably the best I can do to kind of explain where I think we're at the moment with the monthly chart. Let's put the bands back on here. And let's switch back out of the log mode. All right, so I've explained that, why I think we could very well have a red monthly candle this month and still be completely fine. And another reason why I think on smaller time frames, why we're going to continue to go sideways. So let's drill into the chart. Let's look at the weekly. This one, it's begging for a correction. Just looking at what's going on here. We're in the middle of the channel now. I can very well see us coming back down to the mid Bollinger Band. This is often tested on these sort of corrections that we're having, and we have just shot up so fast, so quick, it would not surprise me. Coming down into this area anytime soon, not a shock. We have our trend going down with the stochastic weighted advanced. We have a trend change highlighted here, down. Both metrics pointing down on a trend change for the RSI. We have the MACD sort of leveling out up here. We could get a period, possibly this entire month, of a sort of stagnant or sideways price within that daily channel that we mentioned earlier. And again, I am going in very detailed and in depth with my analysis here, starting from a larger time frame, going down sooner. This is something I highly recommend everyone consider for their own purposes when you're looking at charts. It's giving you a lot better perspective of where everything kind of aligns, as opposed to just looking at the hourly chart and trying to day trade and looking at the minute chart. You really need to start even further out. That's definitely my opinion. But from this chart, I see my prediction would be down, and also on the monthly, a little bit more downside on the monthly. So we're looking at corrections on both of these, in my opinion. Let's drill into the daily. We've already taken a look at this. We've already kind of talked about that potential channel downward that Income Sharks chaired, and the potential flag. I mean, that would be amazing if we just shot straight up to 100K breaking out of this flag. I see this as the much more likely scenario, and I have a lot of respect for Income Sharks, so I see this as very likely. And you'll see this kind of aligns with the chart that I shared as well, and kind of on the weekly and the monthly idea as well, where we kind of get this stagnation and maybe a strong finish to the month to close with a nice little hammer on the monthly candles. So we'll zoom in even more. Let's look at the 4 hour. Let's see if we can find anything critical going on to maybe consider a trade for just the day. This is a 4 hour chart. Price is climbing. That's nice. But I already see a big red flag that I'm worried about, and that is this. This is your confluence of price action. I use moving averages a lot because they work a lot of the time. So I'm going to get my brushes out here and show you. We predicted this trade up to the 100, bouncing off the 200 using moving averages. The 100 rejected. The 200 held as support. The 100 acted as resistance for a bit. It consolidated and broke. 100 support. 100 did nothing here. This signaled to me, and this was something I wanted to share on my live stream that I just haven't been able to get around to them as much as I want to lately. But this is something that marked to me that we might be trending downward even on shorter time frames, such as the 4 hour, because we have lost a key moving average and price continued to move down. It was very bearish in my opinion, and you can expect price to kind of come back up and retest this just as we have here. So we broke this resistance and we came back and tested it. That was pretty good, but we never had the breakout that we wanted. That happens. So what I'm looking for right now, and let me clear all these off. What I'm looking for right now is just kind of a retest right here, and that's kind of what I expect. If I'm looking at a daily chart and we're trading, this is exactly what I would expect to see, and this is where I would be building my trade around, is these moving averages. We do have some potential for a breakout here, so I would set kind of a tight stop loss. But yeah, my intuition tells me that we get rejected here. But tight stop loss, I think there's a pretty good risk reward on this on the 4 hour chart, given our take on the daily, the weekly, and the monthly opinion on things. So we're going to be looking for 67.6 or so. I might even consider a small ladder entry on this one, but these lines just pretty much overlap. If you can get a fill in here, that's where I'm looking for myself. If I were to take a short, that's where it would be. Because I do think in the meantime, it will reject off of those and it'll come down pretty quickly. Look at the 1 hour and see if we can get any sort of confirmation on that on the 1 hour. We're coming up to a resistance here already on the 1 hour with this 50 moving average. One thing you'll notice about the 1 hour chart is that the 200 is the 4 hour 50, I believe. Yeah. So 4 times 1. So it respects the 200 on the 1 hour quite a bit because it's also an important moving average for the 4-hour chart. So this one's pretty important. Keep an eye on 67.6 was the number we were talking about earlier. We're going to be looking for around here. Would line up well with the 100 on the 1 hour. I think things look good for continued price increase on the 1 hour. We got some trend changes. So again, this is why it's important to zoom out first and then zoom in. So we're having the monthly, the weekly, and the daily kind of suggest that we'll probably range and possibly go down a little bit. But the 4 hour and the 1 hour are kind of conflicting because the 4 hour is a pretty short-term time frame if you think about it for a lot of traders. It's pointing to a potential rejection soon, but the 1 hour still shows a bit of hope here. We've got trend changes on pretty much all the indicators, and the MACD is kind of confirming that we haven't reset yet and we haven't started a new trend. So I definitely feel a little bit better about taking this potential short up here and expecting the 4 hour to come down. And that, well, another very important thing that I'm looking at here that I just now kind of put together. We have a ribbon. This is a clear trend change. When you look at this breakdown here, clear the chart. I'll show you the ribbon we have. Shorter moving average here on the white. Next, next, next. When you get all of these in a line, that's usually a nice clean ribbon. I don't have a ribbon indicator on here to show you that, but when you have all the moving averages lined up like that, it's usually a pretty strong indicator of a trend changing. We have that confluence of price back here. If I was looking on the hourly chart, similar to how we were looking on the 4 hour, I would have looked as shorted back here. If I was drilling out and then in, I would have loved to have shorted that on the 1 hour, and that would have been perfect. Wow, I wish I wasn't so busy, man. My kids have been sick. Haven't been able to look at charts and really do this in a little while, but there's a lot of really good information and a lot of really good signals coming out of this strategy that I've got going on right now. So now we're kind of looking at it up here. Let's take a look at the 15-minute chart. Let's see if we got anything. So the 15-minute chart kind of confluences with the 1 hour where you get the 200 kind of aligned with one of its moving averages, which is 50. What we're really kind of thinking happens is that the 15 kind of holds, but we might not get much further just because this is a resistance on the 15-minute chart. So you might not get that entry that you want at 67.6 if that's what you're looking. I would. So now that I've looked at the 15-minute chart, my original plan was short here. But honestly, I think I would like to ladder in, get another order right around this 200 on the 15-minute. If I'm looking to make a quicker trade, like a few hours worth, consider ladder in. Small, maybe quarter margin, half margin, 1x, something like that. Get into my position, tight stop loss, and then be done with it. Take a look at the 5-minute. This is getting into some pretty fast trading. Got a nice little trend with the moving averages trending up. Kind of a lot of noise going on this chart with the 5-minute. And again, this is why you don't look at just 5-minute and 1-minute charts. There's just a ton of noise here. You'll notice the indicators are very jittery. That's what I talk about with noise. 1-minute charts are good for noticing trend changes when you compare them with the 5 and 15-minute. I don't really see much to go with here, considering we're not at the potential change for a 5 or 15-minute trend change, or even a 1 hour for that matter. I'm not really sold on taking a position either way at the exact moment, other than considering laddering into a short, maybe selling just a little bit. But I'm not making any trades. I am positioned from 22K and below. If you've seen my videos, you know that I, during the bear market, started allocating DCA positions once we broke below the 200-week moving average, averaged in, and I haven't really bought since we broke back above it. I haven't needed to. Things are still looking pretty good. I've got a lot of signals on the monthly that things look good. And I might start taking some more trades on the daily as things sort of break out as we go above all-time highs and we get a good signal that things are going to continue higher. I might start making some short-term trades at that particular time. But for now, I've just kind of been enjoying the ride up and sharing these ideas to hopefully help other people try and figure out what's going on. But I'll probably post this idea on TradingView and share it on X in just a little bit. But wow, it's a lot of TA on Bitcoin just going in and out. But there's a lot of information when the month changes to look at. Let's take a look at Ethereum. Really, there's not much reason to do TA on other coins like that, and unless you're really trying to scalp, unless you're really being degenerate and you're looking at like meme coins, like way down the line market cap coins, like you're going to be looking at short-term TA. But really, all that really matters is Bitcoin for the most part, because everything kind of tends to trade the same. It's either usually generally up or generally down. A lot of the same things going on. Ethereum weekly, this looks perfect for a range down. I don't think you really even need to drill into the daily. There you go. It has broken below. Its bands are getting pretty tight. I would watch this area, so around 34.43, for it to possibly come back down to around 3K and make some sort of channel down like we are with Bitcoin. Everything's still kind of hinting at things continuing down. You look at Litecoin. This one is interesting. It's kind of behaved very differently. Something I've had my eye on for a while was Litecoin, and it's trading a little bit differently, so it might be worth looking at TA on. Take a look at its monthly. It has hit its upper bands for the first time since November of 2021. So if it is starting to get bullish on the monthly, which there are some indications that it is on the monthly chart for the first time in a very long time. You've hit the upper band. You've broken some pretty key moving averages. You've got a nice trend on the stochastic weights advanced. You've got a trend change recently on the smoothed RSI, and on the MACD, you have a trend change down at the bottom on the monthly. So Litecoin's very tricky because a lot of people don't like it, and it's ranged very lowly for a long time. But should it reclaim the 50-month average, I mean, it could really outperform for some time, and it has. Let's take a look at the weekly on it. This one's kind of intriguing. So the 200-week on Litecoin has been very, very important in the past. Resistance broke. I guess you'll call that support. That's pretty close. Support. Resistance. 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 Resistance again. So there's a lot of touches on the 200 week. I don't think it's going to hold forever. I do think it's going to give out eventually. But you do see a nice kind of ribbon forming. That's the first time on the weekly you're kind of getting a ribbon on Litecoin. And you could see if price continues to go up above the 200 here, it's going to form that nice ribbon, and things are trending up on the weekly as well. It's just watching out for that key moving average. And the daily is just, it's starting to look like noise at this point. There's so much movement. There's some signals for tops. Here are some divergences, things like that. So this one's hard to predict right now, considering it's at some resistance. I'm not one to touch something like this at the moment. If it breaks out and it closes above that 200 week, I would really consider a position, because I don't think this is going to happen again where you close above it and then you just get shot right back down below it. And I say that because on the monthly, let's take a look at that. We're in a slightly different position on the monthly. We're touching those upper bands. The market in general is bullish compared to the summer of 23. Nobody was bullish. So things are just kind of completely different than it was back here as far as sort of the sentiment. A lot to watch for with Litecoin. I would keep my eye on it. You know, if it goes back to near its all-time highs, say this is a trend, you know. If it goes back to near the all-time highs, you're looking at a 4x from the bottom. What if it breaks its all-time highs? There's a lot to consider with it. I did want to show you how it's comparing to Bitcoin. It has very much been struggling comparative to Bitcoin, but another very bullish thing for it, got a trend change. Got a potential trend change. A potential trend change. So if you do get a strong finish for Litecoin versus Bitcoin, it could not only trend up versus the dollar, but versus Bitcoin. That's why you see these huge moves up in USD price in the past, because it'll move up versus Bitcoin and the dollar at the same time. It just, altcoins do that to where they just skyrocket because they move up against both. And they're a little bit harder to find tops on. But generally, you know, if you pay attention during the bear market, you'll be here during the bull and you'll know what's going on. We want to take a look at Link. Link, very similar to Bitcoin and Ethereum. It's similar to Litecoin in a way on the weekly, except it has proven the 200 as support on the weekly. It could form a nice ribbon up. We'll see. I do think it could test the 200 week, just given that the thesis on Bitcoin and Ethereum are down or consolidating. Again, there's not a good position to take to buy right now for anything. Doge, I hope people took profits. It's looking like that might have been a quick top, but very well could continue to go up in the future, given the sentiment and the moving average changes on the weekly chart. These are all indicators of a big trend change on the weekly scale, which is important. There's not much data on this one. Let's check this one out on like Poloniex, maybe. They've got a ton of price history on these things. Yeah, I mean, Doge is just kind of weird like that. It's got a very weird history. It's not even near its highs on RSI or monthly stochastic weights advanced, but you'll notice the trend is up on the MACD. Good. Take a quick peek at some other things, but hopefully you all enjoyed that TA. That's probably going to be all for the TA today. My mouth is starting to get sore just talking so much. I don't even know how long I've been going for. How long have I been going for? Nearly an hour, but I've been talking a lot. If you don't got any questions, just put them in the chat. See what else there was to share that I had posted on X. And if you don't follow me on X, please do. It's BigBits.io. I typically don't post a lot of my own stuff on there. So far, I've been reposting a lot of other important information from other people's ideas, and you'll notice that we talk about that a lot on the live stream here, and it's something I want to kind of continue to do because it's important to consider other people's perspectives on the market, and it really opens you up to what's going on. So a lot of people are probably seeing this right now because they want things to take off and be very bullish. But based on the TA we looked at and seeing other people's perspectives, I kind of agree more with this. Even though I would love for this to be true and we to bounce out and go straight to 100K, I very much see something like this happening, and that's why we've continued to discuss that on the channel here. I think I got some allergies or something going on, man. Whew. We've been talking about the ETF flows. That was the very first thing we talked about on the stream. So if you haven't, at the end of this stream, whenever you're done watching, go back, watch the very beginning of the stream again to hear what we talked about on the ETF flow. And we're taking all this information and we're combining it with our TA. So we're looking at sentiment, fundamentals, and technical analysis to kind of come up with our thesis here. I don't like to stick to just one. It doesn't make any sense. We have plenty of information available. Why just look at indicators? Why just look at news? We need to take all of this into perspective. And it's a reason why things have worked well in the past for me with this approach. Income Sharks. I shared this from April 1st. This is a much longer channel, but when you're looking at monthly charts, I could see it. This goes through July. Let's take a look. See if I really think something like that might happen. So July. Right here. Yeah, I mean, I could see something like that through July. Because look, if we think this could be a consolidation period, I mean, it could only consolidate through here and still be very bullish and still close above the previous all-time high close of 61.53. So you can consolidate down this way. You can wick below it as many times as you want. If you still continue to close above that, it's going to remain very bullish. So let's see. Where does he have price going on his prediction here? Right around 61K, which is exactly what I just mentioned here. So, I mean, that's a very probable scenario. I mean, it would tick a lot of people off, but this is very possible. And I would be curious as to how this happens as far as from huge sellers, because there's a lot of very bullish sentiment and fundamental stuff coming through. I think the biggest kind of black swan type thing is that seized Silk Road Bitcoin that the government sent to Coinbase to sell. How do they go about selling that? Is it going to be all at once? I doubt it. Is it going to be like an IV drip, slowly selling, kind of like how GBTC has been doing? So we finally survived GBTC outflows, and now we've got government outflows. So it's just something to keep an eye on. We're going to continue to have more and more things like this to work out. But I know this seems like a very long channel, and it's going to feel that way. But it is very possibly likely that something like this happens. I mean, I'm rooting for much shorter, obviously, but yeah, that's very possible. And I very much respect Income Sharks. It's probably one of my favorite follows on X. So follow me and follow Income Sharks. A few others that I repost from time to time. BitMEX Research is very important. Farside Investors, that's where I get the ETF flow information from? Here's a good one, Macroscope. This is also a good one to follow, but the 13F filings, which basically companies have to disclose what they hold. We're going to get major companies reporting these over the next few months. But pretty much the first one to file and share that they own Bitcoin ETF was Burkett Financial Services, and they own 602 shares of IBIT. So it'll be interesting. This is something you need to watch for in the news. What companies disclose that they bought Bitcoin ETFs? So if you have a company like Apple announce that they bought Bitcoin ETFs, that's going to be crazy bullish news. You know, instead of parking Apple's huge cash reserves in, like, I don't know, treasuries or something, if they start buying Bitcoin ETFs, that's just so much cash coming into the market, and that's going to be a huge boost. I think in the past, like 3 years ago, we were looking at market cap of Bitcoin, and we looked at the market cap of Apple, and we looked at it and we noticed that we think Bitcoin is so huge at the time, and it only had like 200 billion market cap, and Apple had enough cash on hand to where if they wanted to create their own stable coin, their stable coin would have had more market cap than Bitcoin at the time. So it was just kind of interesting to put things into perspective. And now Bitcoin's so huge that I don't think it's supposed to be the case. But seeing companies start piling in on it and holding things for longer periods of time, pay attention to which companies do it and the kind of feedback the market gives you with that. Nice monthly close for us, but again, indicators aren't happy about that. So this is a nice chart. I really enjoyed this. So this kind of shows the amount of Bitcoin held. Okay, this is a little bit different than I thought, but this shows the amount of Bitcoin held by GBTC in red and the amount of Bitcoin held by IBIT green. And the point was BlackRock and IBIT had very low fees, whereas GBTC had very high fees. So I think what you're seeing here, and it's just speculation from everyone, is that a lot of people sold out or transferred their ownership to a lower fee, even if that meant taking a hit on taxes with profit. So something to consider here. It looks like these things are starting to equalize a bit. I'm not sure everyone's going to want to take that tax hit on taking profit on GBTC, but eventually these things have got to kind of level out. Inflows and outflows have been very large both ways. As another bit of information that I found important, major national U.S. wealth platforms selected and approved advisor access to their Bitcoin ETF. So that's another thing that's been kind of holding us back. A lot of these major advisors have not been allowed to advise Bitcoin clients, and they kind of have to get approval. So that's another reason we could see consolidation, is just because retail already kind of FOMO'd in at the beginning, and now as you get advisors given the opportunity to advise Bitcoin, you might see more buying in the future as they get approval. And we all know Vanguard, I shouldn't say we all know that, but Vanguard doesn't want to touch Bitcoin. So any change in Vanguard would be huge as well. This is also something I'm looking at here. Just the market in general. total outstanding credit card balances have just went kind of nuts. And this goes back to 1999, but there is inflation, but this was the peak before the pandemic. The stimulus checks helped people with their credit quite a bit. Credit crashed. The amount of credit people had on credit cards just absolutely crashed. But since then, since inflation is crazy, credit card debt all-time highs and really shows no sign of stopping. So this kind of tells you where we're at in the market. People are putting a lot of stuff on their credit card because they can't afford to pay without the credit card. That means these credit card companies are going to be getting a ton of money in fees. Interest rates are high. Eventually, something's going to happen. We're going to get a reset. Pandemic reset here. Housing crisis reset that. Eventually, something's going to come along. It doesn't mean it's going to happen anytime soon, but it's terrible to see that credit card debt's so high. Because a lot of people are wasting a lot of money. $1 billion worth of Bitcoin withdrawn from Coinbase, and that's also something we're kind of looking at, is the total amount of Bitcoin available on the exchange. It's shrinking. It's at all-time lows. That doesn't do much to price, but it does kind of give you a perception of how strongly people believe in their position. If they're bullish and they're willing to take their coins off the exchange, they don't really plan to sell them on the exchange anytime soon. It takes an hour pretty much to get enough confirmations on your Bitcoin transactions to be able to sell on Coinbase. So if the price goes up super fast and you want to sell, it'll be a little while. You're not going to be able to sell immediately through Coinbase. So if you take them off, probably a little bit more convicted to hold on to them. And there are charts that show you, the average amount of time somebody's held in an address, and those numbers are at all-time highs. Everything really looks very good as far as those sorts of fundamental sort of values. So that's about all the news. I think I'm going to whip up this trade idea, post that on TradingView and X. Then we're going to go over some other people's TA. I'm getting really tired of talking today. Again, if y'all have any questions, just post them in the chat. I don't mind. If y'all want to look at a certain coin or stock. This idea was on the 4-hour chart. Hide the MACD. It's taking a lot of space and it's not terribly useful. And this potential rejection could cause a bullish divergence down here. When you look at these, so if it rejects hard and comes down here somewhere, you could get a bullish divergence, but that's something to keep an eye on. That's not something I want forward to. A ratio of around 3, that's great. Stop loss would probably be around your 50 moving average. You want to take profit. 5% profit, 1.8% loss if you lose here. I like it. This will be a fairly trade. Why are we not publishing here? I'm missing something. Did they post an update? No. Catch it. Turn off shield. That very well could. Yep. Gotta have shields off on Brave if you're doing that. All right. 4-hour short potential ahead. You know, look at my previous idea because I kind of liked that format that I had. Go to my profile. Put these ideas. This is the one that I was talking about earlier in the video where we called it perfectly. Copying that format. All right, looking at the chart on the 4-hour time frame, we see a good opportunity this time for a short. What was it? 61 or 67.6. Seven, 4. Moving average verge has potential resistance. Moving averages not yet tested. Let's see what else do we out a daily trends. Consolidation. Free method. Keep this the same. We're not going to try and catch wigs. Let's not ladder. We're going to do a limit order. We're gonna front run just a little bit because I don't want to miss 67, 350. Let's do that. All right, best case scenario. I'm gonna take profit at 63,800. Mindful of the daily chart patterns, trend. Consider any potential changes. This will be 1 to 2 day position to consider and will time out if take profit or stop loss. Do not hit. All right, stop loss was 68.7. Take profit 60. All right. Trend analysis, technical indicators, average. That's good enough. Continue. This is going to be public. This is analysis. Short. Very rare for me to post shorts. Tags. Let's tag it. Bitcoin. Oh, man, these allergies. I'm not going to bother with it. Don't have any related ideas. I will probably need to update some. Yeah, we're going to share on X. Profile. There you go. See the idea now on X where we're looking for this to act as resistance. Like it. All right, so that's my idea. Now, this is probably my favorite thing that I'm doing in my live streams. Is I'm gonna look at other people's ideas because some of them are hilarious. Crypto. I just like to look at the Bitcoin ideas, honestly. Look at the newest Bitcoin symmetrical triangle. Hey, this one isn't terrible. This was something we had pointed out as a potential as well. I'm not a fan of it. I don't think it's going to happen. I think a lot of people have some hopium trying to get the price to go up just by willpower alone. Again, hope we going to 80K. No. We don't hope. And there's really not much technically behind this other than just the pattern. Again, the way I do things, there's a ton of different indicators on there where we're kind of putting all this information together. Chart pattern is not enough, in my opinion, but I do think they have the right idea on the pattern. I just think they need to take in more information. I'm going to boost it just because it's not seen the other ones. That's not a bad idea. And what are we looking at here? We got some Fibonacci's, but at the same time, don't really have an idea whether or not we're going long or short. They're looking for potential ideas. Let's watch before we leap in. Yeah, this one doesn't really offer anything. Good position for a short. That's not on Bitcoin. Here's Ethereum. We'll take a look at this one. Okay, yeah, there's nothing. Like when I said there's a lot of bad ideas, this is one of them. It doesn't have any information. What world? Bull run updates coming your way. Okay. Okay, so they go back to the 30th. It's going to be hard to gauge this one until we look at the current stuff. They've got an upward channel where we have a bigger channel that's downward. This is a 10-hour chart. Very odd time frame to use. I don't really like using odd time frames that most other people don't use. You can get a little bit more insight that way and see things a little bit differently, but it can also skew your perception because people aren't looking at it. Who's looking at a 10-hour chart? This guy might be the only guy in the world looking at a 10-hour chart. Wow. Oh. March 31st. This guy's put a lot of thought into this. I'm not reading all this. He took a short. That's good. Here's a new idea, but it's private. Here are the 3 prices Bitcoin should not fall any lower from the highest to the least of prices. Well, I mean, he was right to short, but definitely below 70K now. Let's try and... This is a ton. All right, where are we at right now with the dude? He thinks we're going up to 67,317. That's where he's going to take profit. Hey, this dude's doing a pretty decent job because we looked at the charts. We did our TA earlier, and we're kind of expecting price to go up to 67,400, and we made the idea to short at 63.5 or 67,350. Excuse me. So we made that idea to do that there. This kind of lines up. I'm time frames are weird. They do things differently, but it seems to work for them. Them taking profit on a short trade there is good. I'll boost them. Where's the boost? They did good. Woo. They do a lot of updates. I don't like to update my ideas. It's a lot of work. I like to teach. I don't like to do that kind of stuff. 666 bars. Ugh. Daily chart. Heck is this? All right. Bitcoin is closing in on the 666-day bar mark of the beast, which also happens to coincide with intersecting macro trend lines on April 13th, 2024. A passing over of Comet 12P, nicknamed the Devil Comet, a solar eclipse on April 8th, along with a lunar eclipse still happening in various time zone and places, all happening on Fibonacci days, marked from June 2022. What is the idea here? Yeah, there's not really any idea here, but it was entertaining. Wave analysis. Oh, that goes way back. That's a trade review. There's a short. Wow, this is looking kind of at the same area we are. Or if they have any idea why. Looks like they got some Fibonacci's. Oh. Optimal Fibo. An interesting area. That's a neat way to put it. An increase in liquidity, RMI range manipulation initiation, no counter trend, fair value and gap imbalance. I like it. I think it works. It kind of lines up with the idea that I'm having. They've got solid reasoning for themselves. It's not like, they're talking about the mark of the beast like the last one was. I just don't see how some of these ideas are posted. Like, why? But this one's decent. This one's decent. And bad. Let's look at a longer time frame one here. We looked at longer time frames earlier. Wave analysis. I always find these interesting. I've never really been too into doing waves. It's a very long running idea. Lots of information. Kudos to these sorts of people who do this. They expect a quick recovery here from an hour ago. Not sure about that. When did they post this? Back in February. So this idea is about a month old. I do kind of like the idea of the consolidation here, because this is what we were talking about. A period of consolidation, especially after such a huge rise. This lines up a lot with what I'm thinking about. I like it. They've put a ton of thought in there. I think this one deserves more than the other ones. I'm not a huge, like I said, not a huge fan of wave analysis, but I see how they use it and I see how it makes sense with how they're doing things. It makes sense. Decent idea. A little more correction. This is an interesting one because I'm not sure why they're targeting this line. I mean, it broke out of that area like they expected it. I don't really see that as like a valid target. We are looking at 67.50. These are targets on the far end, those trend lines that a lot of times they aren't tested on shorter time frames. Like again, a 3-hour chart. What are these people doing? This dollar index, the index. They're basing pretty much their entire idea on the dollar index. If they have a good idea on what's going on, dollar, maybe they'll have a good idea here and it'll work out. I'm not a fan of the lines, trend lines on such a short time frame, especially with a 3-hour chart. This one's weird. I mean, generally, I kind of agree with the idea. It's just I think it's a little too extreme on the ups and downs for the short term. And I didn't really agree with the reasons why. But she did put a little bit of effort in. Much more so than the one with the Mark of the Beast. $79,000 target. What do we got? What a mess of a chart. Ali Explorer. All right, this is an older idea. All right, yeah. Not really seeing much else worth getting into. Ooh, a heck of a stream. I may go back and clip some of these up and post some videos for the first time in a while. But those of you who watched, I really appreciate it. Trying to build this back up. It's going to take a while. I'm trying to get more in a routine. So be watching for more videos. I'm going to be doing live streams. I'm going to hopefully try and clip these up and give you all some videos. It's hard to give you videos with current TA when I've got to go back and I've got to clip them, edit, and post, and do all these sorts of things to get them available. But I'm going to do it. It's going to take some time, but we're going to get the channel going. We're getting close to 10,000 subs, and I haven't even posted much in like 3 years. You know, life has been crazy the last 3 years, and I probably need to do a video to tell you all kind of our story, what's happened. It's been nuts, but everything's good now. I'm excited to be back doing this. This is what I love. I appreciate it. I hope you have a good day, and use your brain. Don't listen to people on the internet for financial advice, even me. Brain. All right, see you later.